On the basis of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, have you repented of your sins and dedicated yourself to Jehovah to do His will?
Rejoice, give glory to Jehovah, for the heavens proclaim all His righteousness. Let us sing to our God joyful songs to His praise. Let us speak to all of His great acts. Let the heavens rejoice.
The baptism in Kiev is a high point of the Divine Teaching International Conventions. The crowd continues to applaud during the 2.5 hours it takes to baptize the 7,402.
So I grew up as a part of the religious group Jehovah's Witnesses. My mom was approached by them when I was 2 years old. From there on, I was raised as part of that religious group through my whole life until I was 25.
I was about 21, 22. I had Jason, and so I was a single mom, and I wanted a better life than how I grew up. When I was young, my father died when I was 6 years old, and so I always mourned his death, always. I met these Jehovah's Witnesses, and basically they said to me, they were a young couple around my age, and I was kind of hippie-ish, they were kind of hippie-ish, and so they talked to me about, well, you know, that isn't God's purpose. People will be able to be resurrected back to life. Well, that was wonderful for me to hear. And I loved these people I met. They were like, I don't know, they just felt like family. I was over at their house all the time. They came to mine. The husband would take Jason like under his wing and kind of like be a dad to him. And I was really good friends with his wife. They said that all Jehovah's Witnesses love each other like a brother, or, you know, brother and sister. You call each other brother and sister, and they all take care of one another. So I felt a fulfilled thing that I didn't have in my life.
You met a lot of different people. You had an opportunity to be a part of a group of people, which appeals to a lot of people, and a lot of people with a common goal. That can create a lot of camaraderie, and I think that's a beneficial thing for people who need that in their life.
I thought that it was truly what we would call the truth. And I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses for 25 years, so I was almost 50 by the time I left Jehovah's Witnesses.
If it was a birthday party, you couldn't be part of it. If it was a holiday party, we didn't celebrate holidays. We didn't want to bring, they said they were pagan origins, so we couldn't do any of that stuff. But even growing up in normal things that kids do, if it's joining high school band or choir, or if it was being into sports or wanting to pursue other extracurricular activities, those were all things that we weren't able to do because it would take time away from our worship of God. And we would be influenced by the bad people of this world, the people who weren't going to survive.
And that's why you weren't ever supposed to have a friend who wasn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Even an adult, like, oh, go volunteer for something. Oh, was that ever discouraged? You don't volunteer for anything. If you want to volunteer for something, then you go out what they call going out in service, when you knock on the doors and try to teach other people about the Bible. So that's the only kind of volunteering that they thought was necessary. Even pursuing something as simple as flower gardening, I was put down for that. I was put down. People would say things to me like, oh, you're trying to make your paradise here on earth now instead of waiting for the new system. And so I felt like I was being picked on. It was things like that that really cut me, you know, and that whole feeling of being a family kind of blew up in my face is how I feel like.
They believe that they are the only ones who have the true religion. They believe they are the only ones who really believe in God. And honestly, they believe they're the only ones who will survive in Armageddon.
When the war of the great day of God the Almighty breaks out, Jehovah will suddenly become a very real person. We will see the most spectacular demonstration of his awesome power as he systematically executes all the wicked. This will have a profound effect upon us.
You know, they preached that God was going to make the whole earth back into a paradise. But as far as I saw, no Jehovah's Witnesses took part in that. They didn't help to do things like to clean up the earth now or even care. They would even make comments like, well, God will take care of that. And I'm like, well, that's not appreciation. To me, it's like, if God gave us this earth, if there is a God, and now I've completely lost my faith. I have no idea if I believe in God or not anymore. But if there is a God, and he gave us this earth, let's say he put us on this earth for us to enjoy, I'm pretty sure he'd want us to take care of it. That if we don't, then what good are we? Why would he want us to live forever on this earth? To me, that doesn't make any sense.
They believe you have to be old enough to make your own conscious decision, they call it. However, most people get baptized in the 12 to 15 age range, which even then is still not a real conscious decision. If that's all they've ever known and all their friends, and that's all they know, and they're getting pressure to get baptized, they generally get baptized. So it's, might as well just do it as a baby, but they don't. They do it at that age. However, when you do that, when you get baptized, you are then committing your life to their religion. Not to God, but to their religion. By doing that, if you ever do want to leave that religion, they then can actually kick you out and take that formal step, they call it disfellowshipping, and then all the people will never talk to you again. Or you have the option of doing what's called a disassociation, where you have to write a letter and say, I no longer want to be a part of this religion. And it has the same impact. Nobody will ever talk to you again.
It is so funny when I do meet someone like at the grocery store or something, and they'll turn and you can see it on their face, like recognition, you know, and they're like, oh, they want to say hello so much. And sometimes I'll actually say hi and say their name or whatever, and then they get this look on their face like fear, you know, like they don't know what to do. They know they can't talk to me, but they kind of think that I shouldn't be talking to them, but it's not true. I have the right to do anything I want to do.
With my daughter, I realized I would never do that. No matter what she chose to do with her life, I would never turn my back on her because she didn't believe maybe something the same way I did. So that's a fundamental aspect of the religion that I didn't agree with. But it also makes it very difficult to leave that religion because it's possible that you leave and your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, and everybody you've ever known will never speak to you again. And these are people you spent years with, had great times with, and played games and fun and had a lot of great times. People who stood up in my wedding, or people who were at my wedding and part of my life. I didn't want to lose my family, my mom, my dad, my sisters. I didn't want to lose them and not have them be part of my life, but I knew that I couldn't do this anymore for me.
I didn't think completely that I wanted to leave, but I felt like I had questions. I would read the Bible and I'm like, wow, this scripture doesn't sound like what they teach. I don't understand it. But they had rules that you couldn't ask. Like if you didn't understand something, and the elders, and especially what they would call the faithful and discreet slave, they would be the head elders like in New York. if they said that something was this way, you had to believe it. You didn't ask questions. You didn't say, but this doesn't make sense to me. You couldn't do that. I will say that when the girls were really little, like, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7, I think I had my first nervous breakdown. I would go to the meetings and I would just be shaking uncontrollably and just like ready to start sobbing, and I would have to leave. And this went on, and then I would go see a psychologist for a while, and then I would get better, and then this happened like several times. And so, and I just thought, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like, what's wrong with me? I didn't realize that at that time, I didn't realize I was living a life I couldn't really fit in, because I had my own thoughts, but having your own thoughts wasn't something you could do.
At the time when I was deciding to leave, I was married, and my daughter was probably 3 years old. We had a friend that had moved in with us because he was disfellowshipped from the religion, and his mom wouldn't speak to him, and his brother wouldn't speak to him, and nobody would speak with him. So he had nowhere to live. He was 19 years old. So we let him move into our home. And at this point, it had been about a year since I had gone to any of the meetings of the religion. I hadn't done anything that they could kick me out for, so they couldn't get me on anything. I hadn't been to their meetings. They didn't even really know what I was doing. But now I let this person who was disfellowshipped move into my home, and since part of their religion is you cannot speak to anyone who is disfellowshipped, that loophole was the reason they could come to my door and knock on the door and want to meet with me and talk to me with the goal of kicking me out. So before going to meet with them, I decided I was going to write a letter myself of disassociation, because I had a feeling that I knew what their goal was, that they were going to try to formally kick me out of the religion, being who I was and all the people that I knew and was well known and well liked. They wanted to make an example of me. They wouldn't let me just disappear. So I wrote a long letter. I looked into their origins. I looked into a lot of different aspects of the religion. And that officially disassociated me from the religion. And that's how I ended up leaving the religion, being disassociated, and I've never gone back.
He was just gung-ho for it. I mean, he was the one behind the counters doing magazines and all this stuff, and everybody looked up to him and stuff. And then he just fell away, little by little. And it did hurt me when he told me that. When he told me that, I was devastated. And I sunk really deep into depression when he told me. But then I stopped going, and he's right. It didn't take long at all before I never wanted to go. You know, like 1 month went by, then 2, then it was like, no, I'm not going. I don't really feel close to God, and when they're praying, they're just words. I don't have that feeling anymore. That I just don't have it, and I kind of miss having it. I know Jason doesn't understand that about me because he doesn't miss it at all, but I miss having the spiritualness, because it was a part of my life from the time I was a little girl, even when I was a Methodist. I always had that need, but now I can't find it anymore. It's gone. And I think it was destroyed by Jehovah's Witnesses, like so totally destroyed.
So I've been fortunate that my mother, my sisters have left, but my grandparents, I never spoke to them again. My grandfather died without ever saying a word to me again, years later. My grandmother's still alive at this point, and I've never spoken to her in the, 18 years since I left the religion. And I've seen her, I've said hi to her, and she will not speak to me. And all of my friends that I ever had growing up, and all the people that I knew, they held true and have not spoken to me. They will not say hi to me if I see them walking down the street. And it makes it very difficult.
I'm not only disassociated, I'm a blasphemer, because I say things against Jehovah's Witnesses, and I say things against the elders.
I would never take it back. I would never change it, And I am thoroughly 100% convinced it was the right decision and the right way to go.
I don't think they'd ever let me back in. Yay!
Work to Festivus Day. Happy Festivus. Happy Festivus. That's right. Hi, Nicholas. Ice cream.
It's the 23rd.
And we're opening gifts now.
And why not? Because we're too excited.
And we can't wait, can we? And we don't believe in Santa, so we're not waiting for Santa to bring them. They're already here, right? Yeah. I know.